Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all ready to hail the mighty. Today, guys, we're back with the Vampire Coast vs. High Elves. It's going to be the Hard Knock Life facing off against Larry, who has come with two very potent friends. Looks like it is going to be the Handmaiden of the Everqueen. And, I saw them at first and I was kind of like, I wonder what the application is of the Everqueen's Court Guard plus the Handmaidens. Then it occurred to me that Sirens are very, very meta right now for Coast. A lot of matchups are using them to dominate the infantry fight for Coast, which normally you do lose. And also Sirens aren't bad at like blocking up like cheap skirmish cavalry and silver helms and Empire Knights and those kind of things, right? So bringing all this magic damage via the Everqueen's Court Guard plus the Handmaidens of the Everqueen, pretty cool. On top of that, Larry does also have the Boon of Isha, so if you're really, really on point with this, you can use the Boon of Isha in conjunction with like Reaver Cavalry or Silver Helms or even Rangers to give magic damage to your troops on the ground, and they can really mincemeat Sirens pretty effectively. So I saw that and I was like, clever tactics indeed. Now for my main battle line, it's going to be Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs backed up by two Bombers. Bombers obviously give you the ability to repel aggressive builds. If they come in with like 4 or 5 Rangers or anything of really, quality in terms of troops, even White Lines, for example, the Bombers can do a pretty excellent job of turning the tide or at least blunting their advance to an extent. So we do have 2 of those. Triple handguns in the back, which are going to be deployed kind of in the Flying V Mighty Ducks formation. We have one here, one in the center that's going to be a little bit more deep set, and then one on the far side as well. So for example, if cavalry do collapse on my zombie pirate gunnery mobs here, I can crossfire with these ones, provide some cover fire. You get the picture. It's very much, how Coast was played. I mean, Coast has kind of changed a bit. I would say nowadays they're a little bit more dependent on like gunnery wights, gun bats, sirens, that sort of play. But there was a time when gun lines for Coast were really the, all the business in the realm. Double Sirens, again, if I can keep them away from magic damage, they are a pretty good repellent and can deter things and terror out cheap units out of your back line. Double Scurvy Dog, Lamprey's Revenge, going to be protecting mortars. Archers are one of the big weaknesses of the Vampire Coast, so if your opponent is going to be coming in with archers, which High Elves, Wood Elves, Dark Elves will occasionally use Dark Shards, but it's a little bit of a liability because typically all the elves, with the exception of the Wood Elves, do have bolt throwers. Bolt throwers are pretty good against mortars, but on this map, being the Alpine Ridge, I knew that if he had bolt throwers and I could get line of sight, I could get the advantage shooting with my mortars. So a little bit of a map dependent build, but again, mortars typically aren't terrible against Elvish arrows as is. So that's my army with the Hard Knock Life. And for my opponent here, double Reavers on both sides. Reaver Archers looking to do some harass and poke in, also not terrible at diving in. Reaver Archers are pretty proficient in melee with 32, 34, and 27 for their combat stats with a reasonable charge bonus of 27 or 24. They can counter skirmish hounds, they can defeat scurvy dogs in combat, they can dive into my back line. I do like the utility that he brought with the ranged ones. For the rest of his line, it's going to be Spearmen, just cheap. He's got some Reavers in the back, double Handmaidens, probably to snipe Noctilus or my characters. If I had come in with like Celastra or someone big like that, they do have armor-piercing missiles, and having 2 Handmaidens of the Everqueen sitting on top of your Lord is actually enough to kill them. So you got to be very, very careful about that. Now the main skirmishing is underway. The mortars are dropping some heavy bombardments here on top of the Spearmen, and something about Scurvy Dogs, a lot of people don't use them as like more of a cleanup tool. Obviously, it's kind of intuitive to go around your opponent's back line and get their archers, but oftentimes Scurvy Dogs are best used as a sweeper unit. Just think if you're playing football, or as we call it here in the United States, soccer, you kind of want to use it to clean up the riffraff that gets a little bit close. So you see, you soften up the spears, they take a little bit of a beating. I charge in with the Scurvy Dogs, I get a little bit more damage. Unfortunately, the mortar did friendly fire a lot of my Scurvy Doggos, but you can see we get a Spearman down to the point where now a Deckhand mob unit can probably beat them in combat. So it's these little micro plays, micro trades that you're making with Vampire Coast that can help your front line be a little bit more formidable. Now Reavers do charge in, a little bit of a blunder there on my opponent. They are going to be getting blasted pretty good by the handguns. The Bombers do try and unleash a salvo, but thankfully for him, he does pull back before any serious damage is done. And the handguns do fend them off for now. Now, on the backside, he is using his Reaver Archers to try and find his way in, but I am leaving the Lamprey's Revenge to defend my mortars, and I do also have my handguns in a little bit of a symmetrical formation here. Well, not really symmetrical, but they're just kind of in standby mode to start shooting at those units. Now, Bombers doing their job. Obviously, you want to put your Bombers in guard mode, and they are going to be unleashing some nice shots into the Spearmen. Here, more Spearmen are advancing, handguns laying down some Overwatch fire, and this is the time when you sweep in with Scurvy Dogs and look for the scraps, right? So let's attack these Spearmen, get a couple free kills. I see that they're broken, I pull back, but I see the other Spearmen moving in, so that is another opportunity to get those Scurvy Dogs to sweep in and get a bunch of free kills. And this is very much how you see high-level Coast players like Anticity do it in various faction wars. Sometimes you'll see them with as many as 3 or 4, but very, very effective. And I do find a bit of an opening, and this is a very balls deep play. I was on the fence about it. I was like, oh man, the Everqueen scorecards are right there. I didn't actually quite see the Reavers hiding behind them, so I thought I could get some free damage in against these very expensive units, and if I kill them, you know, then I'm suddenly in good shape with Syrenes. But I do get caught pretty badly. Well played to my opponent there. He got my doggos, and I most likely will not be getting a ton of value out of them over the course of the game after this point. So the Syrenes there, chewing on the Reavers. You can see how effective the Syrenes are at fending off these cheap cavalry units. The handguns should be able to repel fire. I do get a couple doggos back and use an invocation and a rear charge into the back of the spears. I could have maybe slipped through here and gotten away, but I was like, let's do some damage before I lose control of these guys. But in the end, I think that was a mistake. I should have pulled them back and ran through my opening. I thought I could collapse on the spears and break them fast enough to get away, but that wasn't the case. So now the Lion Chariots of Grace pushing through my lines. Syrene's not terribly effective at dealing with them. The Hard Knock Life does have a halberd, so if they sit still, he is going to be able to get in there and hit pretty hard with his halberd. Hopefully drag down a couple models, but, you know, a little bit of an unfortunate situation. The two handmaidens of the Everqueen are just sniping Noctilus. He's kind of beat up. Bounce Fire's really even at this point. We got a very tight game on our hands, and realizing I need my Krabos to do some stabboing, I pull back my halberds here and here to screen. My opponent, though, does also see the opening, and he gets the Reavers in to jump on top of my mortars. A very, very nice play, and probably will lead to the demise of at least one of my mortar teams. However, we do get a nice little trade against the Lion Chariots of Grace. We wear him down and drop a big overcasted invo to try and salvage some of the handguns and Syrenes that are engaged in combat here. So there go the Reavers. Nasty, nasty fire going down as the gunnery mobs do unleash a massive overlapping fire. A little bit obstructed are the ones in the back, but for the most part, I have two healthy handguns. I don't have any extra powder via gunnery whites, but I'm starting to stabilize my back line a little bit, and both Syrenes are very healthy. The handmaidens of the Everqueen have been a little bit elusive this game, but they also have been getting bombarded by mortars the entire game. So you can see their combat efficiency down to 41 to 60 models, using a little bit of ammo here to clear up the bombers that were trying to advance on them. But overall, we have been able to kind of hold them at bay, and I was feeling pretty confident at this point of the game. I felt like for the first time we started to get a little bit of an edge, but if the two handmaidens, of course, were able to snipe Noctilus, I could definitely lose the game, like 100%, because then again, without the Hard Knock Life and my magic, which I still had a ton of, I had several invocations and raised deads, and I believe also the Moon Dials. I may have used one charge. I don't quite remember if I did, but even still, I do want to be saving those. So here comes some more Lion Chariots moving in on the Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs. Doing pretty good this game. And Lion Chariots, you wouldn't think you need a ton of armor piercing in this matchup, but, you know, or you need the Lion Chariots for armor piercing, but what makes them very good against Coast is the fact that they do have 30% missile resist. There was actually, oh man, I was having some big events a long time ago. It was maybe like a year ago, and I remember we had Flying Taco coming against a very strong Coast player, and he was able to win using a mass White Lion army because his opponent at the time, I might have been Anticity or someone else, I can't recall, but went with a mass gun line, and his entire army had 30% missile resist and was able to eventually just overwhelm the forces of Vampire Coast. So definitely bringing in a couple of these units isn't bad. Also, I do like a couple White Lions in this matchup from time to time. They give you extra AP against things like Lamprey's Revenge. They have missile resist and are more durable against bombers and can really cut through Coast infantry. So having like one or two of them isn't necessarily bad. Now in the back, we did have these annoying archers hiding in the trees, kind of poking and prodding, moving in. So Noctilus is going to be using a gunnery mob summon, and you can see here we are dropping some very, very nice fire with the handguns in the distance, which are obstructed by the trees, but the pistols are a little bit closer, and Noctilus has got his big pimp cane and is making sure that all is good in the realm. So looking at the army of the Elves, the handmaidens of the Everqueen have certainly done some good damage this game. I'm actually quite impressed with their DPS, but they are running a little bit low on ammo. And at this point, it looks like my opponent is going to be using Larry with the Boon of Isha and Star of Avalorn to get a nice alpha strike on my Syrenes. So some good damage coming in, but we will be responding in kind using an Invocation of Nehek, which is going to be giving a nice resurrection to many of the Sirene models. The Krabos are in there, and we should be able to win this trade. Foz protection going down as well, though, does put them up to 55 melee defense, and I have to admit, without that invocation, could have lost a Sirene right there. They were certainly doing some good work. On the periphery of the battlefield, handguns just kind of fending off Reaver archers, not too much of an issue there. The main problem with my opponent's army, of course, is the handmaidens and Larry herself, but pulling back the Syrenes at this point, just trying to keep them healthy for the sake of maybe getting my opponent to army losses or pushing in the late game. You know, when these guys are out of their magic ammunition, I can push in, and I did also see the handmaidens of the Everqueen kind of creeping up, so a little bit cautious about that. The mortars are firing in. Hard Knock Life does have the Roth's Moondial, and we'll be using that in a hot moment to shut down the focus fire that's going down to the Syrenes, and there it is. So Roth's Moondial does have much, much longer range than the basic Animate Dead, and the Crabs are moving in once again. Obviously, Reaver's looking to commit to another fight with Larry with the Boon of Isha, and yeah, I'll probably lose the Sirene unit, but now we have zombies chasing the handmaidens of the Everqueen. They can't, like, run and shoot 360, so they're going to have to scoot and shoot, and the entire time the inexorable horde of zombies is right on their heels, while the mortar fire drops some okay shots. They're a low model count now, so it's not going to be as effective, but this probably will spell the end of the High Elves, as we do have the Hard Knock Life getting in there with his halberd, doing a lot of damage to this big flying pigeon. And it looks like Larry might be able to get away, but there is handgun fire coming from across the battlefield. I still have one unit of full health handgunners with pretty good ammunition for the, 8.9, whatever, 8 minutes and 10-second point here in the battle. But Larry does charge in once more. The Count Noctis is going to be able to drop the big halberd, and that will be army losses most likely for the Elves. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with the handmaidens, but it wouldn't be too much of an issue considering I have handguns and my character's alive, or my character. So well played to my opponent. It was an 8-9 minute game, fairly contested for the first, I would say, 60-70% of the game. And he had a very unique build, which I thought was cool. Bringing in all that magic damage certainly made me think twice about getting too aggressive with my sirens. But overall, the mortars performed and did very well. 750, 750. Crabbo got about 1700 from those big pit fights. Bombers both got 700. Like, many of the elements performed my army. The one thing that didn't, due to my lapse in micro and judgment, was my scurvy dogs. So I should have been a little bit more cautious with them. I think that really is a telltale sign of veteran coast play is careful scurvy dog play, which, I'm a decent coast player, but to really take it to the next level, it's those little micro decisions like I was talking about in the beginning. Yeah, I loved his build. It was cool. Handmaidens both got pretty decent value. I'm not sure about their overall cost on foot, but probably around this, I would imagine. But this one definitely probably overdid itself. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. I had a blast. And we'll be back with more replays soon. This was Vampire Coast vs. High Elves. Let me know if there's any replays, or not replays, but matchups you guys would like to see. I know that Norska doesn't get a ton of love, so I'm going to make a bit of an effort to play some Norska this week. All right, thanks again for joining. We'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves, and that is it for now.